Walter Carter here with an Epiphone Zephyr Emperor Regent from 1951. This guitar represents 30 years or so of guitar wars between Gibson and Epiphone. Epiphone's known now as an import brand owned by Gibson, but going back to the 20s, Epiphone was probably Gibson's biggest competitor in the guitar market. Actually, it started in the banjo market in the 1920s. Epiphone was named after a guy named Epaminondas Stathopoulos, and he was part of a Greek family that came to the U.S. in the early 1900s. His father, Anastasios, was an instrument maker who died in 1915, at which point the sons, Epi, Phrixo, and Orphe, took over the company, initially as the House of Stathopoulos, but then in the mid-20s, they became Epiphone. They made their mark in the 20s with banjos. And at that time, Gibson was still trying to revive the mandolin market, and Epiphone was a much more prominent banjo maker in the mid-20s. Gibson started to catch up in the late 20s, and then when public taste swung back to the guitar, Gibson swung ahead of Epiphone until 1931. Epiphone sort of launched a blitz with models called Master Build, which was sort of a play and a stab at Gibson's master model line. Gibson's biggest model at the time, the L5, was 16 inches wide. Epi's deluxe model was 16 3/8. In 34 or so, Gibson added a model called the Super 400 that was 18 inches wide. Not to be outdone, Epiphone added a guitar called the Emperor that was 18.5 wide. And although this one's electric from a later era, it maintains that body width. Through the 30s, most of the competition was in electronics, and Epi actually came up with the first pickup with adjustable pole pieces. In the meantime, Gibson came up with a cutaway, which Epi was a little bit late getting to. In the late 40s, after the war, it became standard on a lot of Epiphones, and they were delineated by the term Regent. This model, without pickups, would be the Emperor Regent if it had a cutaway. Epi did the same thing with electronics and designated it as Zephyr. An electric guitar with a cutaway is a Zephyr Regent, and so being an Emperor, that's how this got its name, Zephyr Emperor Regent. It looked like the competition would resume between Epiphone and Gibson, but unfortunately Epi had died and his brothers were just not able to keep the company together. Epi did come up with these pickups. They look like the later Gibson mini humbuckers, but they're actually single coil pickups with an odd design. The coil wraps this way and the pole pieces are actually outside the coil. Gibson had just come out with a 3 pickup guitar called the ES5. It had 3 knobs and a master tone control. If you wanted to go from the neck pickup to the bridge pickup, you'd have to turn down the neck pickup, turn up the bridge pickup. Epi came up with a cooler system with these push buttons. You can pick up 1, which is this one, pick up 2, pick up 3, all 3 of them together, 1 and 2, 1 and 3. So you have all kinds of different combinations, and it works in a way that we're familiar with today. So there's 1, that's the neck pickup, a little sharper, and then so it looked like Epi is ready to just take on the world with this guitar, and especially to take on Gibson, but it just didn't happen. The company's finances were shaky. They worked a deal with the Kahn Instrument Company in 1953 where they gave up most of the territories. The deal with Kahn didn't work out very well. In around 1955, Orphe Stathopoulos regained control of the company, but there was just not enough of the company left. In 57, the remnants of Epiphone were sold to Gibson, who then went about reviving the name as a sort of second brand of Gibson at first, and then later as an import brand. But if you want to experience a guitar that represents sort of the last hurrah of one of the great American guitar companies, pick up the Zephyr Emperor Regent.